Thank you. Hello. It gives me great pleasure to welcome John Angus to the studio here. And John is the Managing Director of Switch Hospitality. John, before we start to explore some of the key items of the day and issues you'd like to chat about, tell us a bit about yourself and your role at Switch.
Sure. So Switch Hospitality is a hotel management company. We run 4 hotels in Birmingham currently, main one being Park Regis, 253 rooms up at the top of Broad Street. We also have a private rental development and serviced offices as well. So we are pretty covered over Birmingham actually with regards to our actual residential hotels.
You've got other strings to your bow though, haven't you? You're involved in tourism in the region?
Yeah, I am currently chair of the Hospitality Association. I'm a board member actually of West Side Bid and very much involved in developing the sort of West Midlands. I'm part of the actual large events group. So very much part of bringing actual tourism to see how we can help drive big events and tourism into the city.
So you've got a pretty good overview of the state of the hospitality and tourism sectors in the city. How are you feeling at the moment? Are you feeling in a good mood? Are you feeling optimistic?
I think Birmingham is in a positive place. I think that the last 12 months pre the Commonwealth was probably difficult because of the build up, the construction, the various things, the tram happening in the city. So there was lots of tentative actual positivity, if you call it that. I think the Commonwealth Games has been truly fantastic. It was a fantastic experience. Our hotels were completely full. Park Regis was an athletes' village, which was an amazing experience. So we had 250 athletes for over 3 weeks. So our team got to interact with lots of different nationalities, and I and a few of my team got to go to touch a few of the events, and actually brought my family here on a Saturday just to experience Grand Central and actually all that area around there in the Bull, etc. So I think the whole experience has been fantastic, which has now given a major lift, and I think everyone in the city is now experiencing actually a positivity from that.
And when the games had finished, the city and the region was enveloped in a sort of a warm glow, wasn't it?
Yes.
And everyone was so positive. I think it's carried on, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, sort of hot to trot was pretty much the Conservative Party conference was in October, so only a few months after the games. So there was lots of events coming actually one after the other. And yes, positivity, tourism actually grew, but I think the Birmingham couldn't have had a better showcase, and I think it's been actually very positive. And I think the upcoming actual large events that are still coming in to the city will continue that trend.
I always think that hospitality and tourism, in a way, is a good bellwether as to the state of the economy. People have money in their pockets; they're happy to spend. So you're noticing that people are spending. People are wanting to go out and go and see the amazing places and eat in the amazing places of Birmingham.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that it has to be tinged with a note of caution, because I think that people understand value, and I think that I continually, with my hospitality hat on, try to preach to my colleagues in the city that you have to give quality service as well. I think if you don't provide a quality service, people understand that value. There is actually lots of competition out there. There are lots of cities. I've spoke to Manchester and actually to Liverpool fairly sort of recently, and they have Manchester is actually struggling with a large influx actually of new properties coming in. Actually, Liverpool's got actually an occupancy drop. 2 major cities that are trying to find ways to increase their actual tourism, whereas Birmingham is sitting right now with a positivity, but we have to give quality service, take care of our guests, create the environment, take care of our assets, all the basics of actually hotel management. But unfortunately, when the middle of the business is a bit squeezed, they're the things that people compromise on. So I think that people do want to spend, no question. I mean, the weekends are very, very busy. Corporate guests, conference guests is still very, very strong. But I keep on saying we have to give the actual quality service level.
There's a choice out there, isn't there?
100%.
Let's rewind about 5 years ago, pre-COVID. What if you can think back that far? There's been a lot of water under the bridge since. How is it sitting at the moment, the hospitality in the city compared to as it was then? And this, I mean, bearing in mind we had the sort of Brexit issues and some of the skills, some of the staff were leaving to go back to Eastern Europe and so forth.
Yeah.
Where are we now?
I think there's different sort of measurements. I think from a revenue stream, most hotels will be back at 2019 levels. I think from a profitability standpoint, that could be variable depending on the property. I think that one of the outputs of COVID is that costs have risen actually fairly substantially across actually most areas. So even though you may be taking the same income, you're probably not quite making the same profit. So, I mean, our businesses currently are having to generate 20% more income than pre-COVID just to get to the same profit levels.
There's also sort of a minimum wage factor to take in, isn't there? So.
Yeah, which from taking care of your team and making sure that your employees are getting paid sufficient to the actual rate of inflation and the cost of living. So yeah, I mean, in April, the wage goes up 9.64%, I believe. So might as well be 10%. But what happens in our industry is that when the actual minimum wage goes up, every other level has to go up too. So in our industry, probably most industries, payroll is the highest cost. So what we're saying is that payroll is going up by 10%. So we either have to become actually more efficient, which we generally are anyway, or we've got to find a way to pay for that.
There's a ripple effect, isn't
100%.
HS2. What's your mood about that? Are you optimistic? And what do you think it'll bring to the region?
I think to be fair, I think if you're not optimistic, then I'm not sure actually what you're reading, because ultimately the pain of getting there is probably similar in a small degree to the building of the tram. We were on Broad Street. We experienced 12 months of trying to build a tram and the impact that had on tourism and how the actual place looked. So the building and creation of HS2 is probably where the actual negative is. But the negative, I believe, is far outweighed by the positive. I mean, to get into London, is it something like 38, 40 minutes, something like that? It's just, it's going to open up actual links. And I think as well, we're experiencing in our actual residential piece, because we obviously do apartments as well as part actually of our structure, that there's lots of people who are now looking to move into the outskirts of Birmingham from the outskirts of London, because technically to get to London from places like Marlow, it's probably quicker to get there actually from Wolverhampton than Dudley.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably quicker to get. It'll be quicker to get to London from Birmingham. It will be to get from Greenwich to Euston, probably.
100%, and you can. I mean, I experienced that personally 20 years ago. We moved actually from London to the Cotswolds and got actually one more bedroom and saved money on the price. So ultimately, people can go from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom house and save money. So I think that the benefits to the city and in the infrastructure actually is going to be actually fantastic.
Are you sensing that people are keen to invest in Birmingham in a way they perhaps haven't been in the past?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it'd be interesting. I'm part of the Birmingham delegation that's going to MIPIM in Cannes next week. And that's an event that happens each year, which is all about attracting actually investment to the city. But I think, when we were at the pre-meeting actually with the mayor, Andy Street, the positivity that we can take to Cannes to talk to actually investors about all the things that we just talked about, the fact that it's a thriving city, HS2, the developments, the blue chip companies that have already moved here, the banking sector. But I think as well the actual pharmaceutical centre as well that's starting to happen now, and the amount of those businesses that are actually moving in. I think there's a clear positivity, absolutely.
I've always thought actually that, I mean, we all know that Birmingham is probably guilty of being over modest, perhaps hiding its light under a bushel too much. I'm interested in what do outsiders, to use for want of a better term, what do they think of the place? And I think that the Commonwealth Games is its place in the sun. Yeah, it shone a light on the city, and I think we all hope that the investment will follow.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was at the Pride of Britain Awards last night, which is a truly touching event. One of the Commonwealth volunteers was up on the stage and he said, I think we've proven to people that Birmingham's not that bad. And it's a shame that perhaps the actual perception was that Birmingham was bad, because it's not bad. And I think that the perception of the city, if you go around the city now, actually one of the negatives is the amount of construction work that's going on. But actually that's a positive, because ultimately when that's actually completed and continues, there used to be an old adage when I was actually working in London, is the number of cranes would show you how positive the actual economy was in the city. And if you look at the Birmingham skyline and the number of cranes and number of developments and number of buildings that are being built, well, that tells you a positive actual story. It's not all actually plain sailing, there's no question about it. As we said before, we're all having to deal with increased costs. But in some cases, that's a fact of life, and you have to get on with it.
John, are there any items of news or any issues which have caught your eye in particular, which are particularly relevant to what you do and to our business community?
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 stories in the press currently. Obviously one of the hot topics, I guess, is next week's budget. And obviously there was quite a stark increase in corporation tax from 19 to 25%. And
Which looks like it's going to stay.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lobby to try to change that, but I don't think that will happen. But I think sometimes as well, what businesses have to do is take the positives as well. We've all benefited from a drop in our actual rateable value from the beginning of April. So the swings and roundabouts are there. Fine, okay, if you have to pay extra corporation tax, as long as you can see the value of the extra 5 or 6%, then you have to get on with that. I think the other thing in the press that is pretty key is the whole conversation around actual migrant workers, and the threshold to be able to come and actually work in the UK has clearly been actually risen. So to get actually a work permit, there's certain actual qualifications, certain actual salary levels. And what that's done is that the core employees who perhaps were working in our industry and in our kitchens and our actual housekeeping departments from Eastern Europe and various other countries who actually left pre-Brexit, they don't have a route to come back. And clearly in our industry, that's a challenge. And you've probably seen lots of press about not being able to find enough staff. Well, in my opinion, if those employees were contributing to the economy, if those employees were paying tax, I'm not talking asylum seekers, I'm talking about, quality actual employees from actually Eastern European countries. And if they were here before, I believe that they should be allowed to come back in, because the ones who stayed were actually allowed to stay. So I think for our industry to create a pathway to bring those employees back can be only beneficial on all sides.
Is there some lobbying going on?
Yes, absolutely. Well, actually UK hospitality are very much involved in that. And I think that there's a common sense. I think now it's about putting together a process. So I think, the other thing that actually we're looking at, because of our actual construction arm and building arm, is that there appears to be growth. I think the Financial Times were talking about building is growing at its fastest rate. I think there's lots actually of general sort of legislation coming in on building now, and I think the variable costs are a challenge. But I think the overall positivity is, I think there's 2 or 3 things out there that are fairly sort of relevant. But again, you can spend a lot of time actually dwelling on the negative. I believe actually dwelling on the positive.
Do you think the workers' habits, the change in workers' habits, which have been fairly significant, and with there's talk of 4-day week being adopted more and more, is that a good thing or bad thing for the hospitality industry?
I think it's probably an answer for an answer. I think it depends upon actually what you're doing. I think that flexibility is key. We are more focused on actual work-life balance. So for us, if an employee has a balanced home life and a happy home life, then they're going to be a much more balanced employee. So essentially, it's the beauty of actual hospitality is it can be on a case-by-case basis. But I think that because we are customer-facing and we have to be actually consistent, so to say to everybody who is a customer service actual agent, so whether that be actual reception or actually housekeeping or actually front office or the actual restaurant, you have to work every day, and the people in the back office don't, we're not being actually consistent. So there's a consistency there, but there's no question about it. You know, you have to have flexibility and you have to understand. I think it's more about understanding all of your employees as much as possible and then trying to be as flexible as possible.
Great. I'm coming to the end now. 5 years ago, I think everyone would say that Birmingham has moved on dramatically. 5 years' time, where do you see the city? Where do you see more hotels? Do you see more bars? Do you see more Michelin-starred restaurants? Where do you think is Birmingham going to be a new wonder destination, for want of a better term?
I'm not sure that it would get to the point of being a wonder destination, but I think what if you look at Manchester and actually Liverpool, as much as they're struggling a little bit, in our view, they've reached the precipice and they're starting to plateau. I think if you look at those actual developed city centres with the tram, with the bustling actual nightlife, with the structures around them, the difference in those cities is, for example, is that they have a multitude of what you call luxury 5-star actual hotels. Birmingham doesn't actually have that. And that's the difference. And then if you look at the number of actual Michelin star restaurants in those cities, and then in comparison to Birmingham, it doesn't have that. And the only reason it doesn't have that is because there's always been a belief that you wouldn't be able to charge the rate actually for those hotels. I believe we are busting that now, and there's a real demand. So when one 5-star or luxury property comes in, or one more Michelin star comes in and justifies itself, the rest actually will follow. So I suggest in 5 years' time, we will see an uplift in the quality actually of properties and the top end actually hotels. So your sort of Ritz-Carltons, your Sofotels, those type of hotels, your Kimptons that are in the other cities that aren't here, I think you'll start to see them actually arriving in Birmingham.
I think that's a pretty positive way to end. John, thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Pleasure.
It's been
Thank you very
good
much.
to meet you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.